If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, Mormon from the Low! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Rocco Miller. He does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to be discussing with him what we've seen out of some of these mid-major programs over the last few weeks, the Mountain West, and how they've been operating. We're also going to be taking a look at just the scheduling aspect of things in terms of conference games, as the ACC is going to be going to an 18-game conference schedule. We're going to talk extensively, as a matter of fact, about the ACC in this podcast as well with our good friend Rocco. He's very intrigued by this conference. I'm very intrigued by this conference, so we're going to be doing that in a few minutes. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball on Sunday. First things first, hopefully you all had a great Mother's Day yesterday. All you moms out there, you deserve it. So glad to be able to deliver that message. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but everything is brought to you by EdgeBoost, because over at EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365 on leap years, 366 days of the year, because this is not something that is running on credit or anything like that. It's a bank account that you're able to utilize for all of your gambling-related transactions. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, type in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll give you a dollar-for-dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's talk with our good friend Rocco Miller. He does amazing work over at Bracketeer.org. He's helping so many of these schools out with their scheduling right now. He is a very hardworking man that all 12 months of the year just lives and breathes college basketball. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Rocco Miller, his first and last name, and then the number 8 altogether. And Rocco, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, great to be on with you. How are you? Second weekend of May. Can you believe how fast time is flying?
It is sure flying, Rocco, and my goodness, it has been a wild off season. And just what have you made out of the last few weeks? Because it does feel like a lot of these power conference teams are starting to get things squared away. But now some of our favorites, the mid-majors, they're really starting to strike right now, while you still have some of these, shall we say, mid-tier guys out there, and they're really doing a nice job of being able to swoop them up.
I think we just saw recently that the College of Charleston picked up Mr. Dean from the same state.
Great name.
Yes, prolific scorer at USC Upstate, and we know Chris Mack likes to play a wide-open offensive style. Charleston was surpassing the 80-point barrier more often than not in non-conference NCAA play. Obviously, for that league, College of Charleston has a bevy of resources, almost operate budget-wise like an Atlantic 10 program. We'll see if they ever end up in that league. But as of now, they have a big advantage in the league, and they have a nice roster across the board. I was pretty impressed by that. You look at St. Bonaventure, earlier in the week, they picked up kind of a sneaky transfer from Tennessee Tech by the name of Daniel Egbuniwe. And he was a 10 point, 6.5 rebounding game guy. He had 5 double-doubles down the stretch in the OVC. Those are the ones I'm always kind of curious about, because OVC is one thing, but the A10 is quite a step up. But they do have, the great Woj running the roster GM position. So always curious how these pieces all fit together. I think at the end of the day, that's the main thing. Anybody that's transferring up a level and taking probably a salary increase as well. They're also taking the risk of, hey, am I a starter? Am I a bench guy? What am I? Some of these cases, especially at the Power 5 level, you're being asked to redshirt while being paid. So it's a fascinating situation. And here just recently, more on the ACC side, some big news just coming across my desk recently, which was Malik Thomas not only getting his waiver approved, which I think surprised most here in the WCC, but also committing to Virginia and getting to play in that Ryan Odom system, which is usually really great for guards. We saw what Philip Russell did for VCU last year. I imagine Malik Thomas will have a similar scoring role in that system. And man, the ACC will be fascinating with Ryan Odom in the league, as well as Jai Lucas at Miami, and obviously the big fish, Will Wade at NC State. I really think the league has at least a solid top 8 or 9 heading into the league, and then anything they can get from the other 9 is a bonus. Fascinated by that, not only that, but also what the ACC did this week, Greg, by moving to 18 conference games to allow for 13 non-conference games. I think that was done primarily for Duke and North Carolina to have more flexibility, play more big games nationally, knowing that the rest of the ACC is down and not necessarily helping those two big, blue blood programs. But my question is, what are teams like SMU, Wake Forest, Stanford, California, et cetera, what are they going to do with those 2 extra games? Are they just going to buy like 2 more bad games and not help their schedule at all? I'm very curious to see if that's a good move or if they should have stuck with 20 league games.
And I do want to get your thoughts on that, because most of these power conference leagues, they have went to 20 conference games. There are still a few that are at 18, but what's your overall takeaways on that? Because I do think that for some conferences, less is more with regards to conference games. Like we have been seeing out there in the ACC, if you're facing a team like a Boston College, for example, sorry, Boston College, not really helping you out. And if Duke can instead play against insert your favorite SEC school here, that's going to be big for them. Meanwhile, if you're a conference like the Mountain West, I do think that that's a very interesting dynamic as well, because those teams beat up on each other. The Atlantic 10, as we both know, beats up on each other as well. And the dynamic on 18 versus 20, I think, is just so interesting from conference to conference.
It is. I honestly want more non-conference games, whether it's the ACC or any level of league, because I think it tells you more about the strength of the teams.
And allow me to throw this in here as well. Am I the only one that wishes we got like 1 or 2 like non-conference games from all these teams, much like we used to see from the SEC versus Big 12 challenge, because that gives you a gauge as to where those conferences are at in January and February that we just don't get otherwise.
We need that. We'd be much better off, and it would help the committee make more informed decisions. I think 2 games is actually necessary because you could have a bad night. But I've had a proposal that's still out there. You can find it on bracketeer.org since 2018 to do a 4-day showcase in Vegas or wherever it makes sense. Easy place for teams from all over the country to fly in. Make it a scouting event with NIL attached to it. That way you get the Dukes and the Kentuckys and the Kansases to want to play in it, and open it up to, like, my idea is the top 128 teams. I'm very aggressive with that. I understand. But even if we got the top 64, or, all you have to do is a multiple of 4, because my proposal is to essentially just build 4-team pods based on where you're ranked, and you can go off the net. That's totally fine with me, and get yourself 2 extra non-conference game. Let's do it the first or second weekend of February, give you some time to finish up the league title race for the regular season and go right into your conference championship. But I don't think that would be that hard to do for every league, to just carve those dates out, a Thursday through Sunday. And if you play Thursday, you play Saturday. If you play Friday, you play Sunday. It would get you back home, especially now that it's a for-profit, people making money sport. We have to get the field right for the tournament. With the SEC last year getting the 14, obviously you could argue up to 13 of those belonged. I'll never believe that Texas belonged. In terms of credentials, obviously they had tons of talent. We could have that argument the rest of time, but because the top of the SEC was so strong, it was easy for teams like Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas, Vanderbilt, etc., to just get some good home wins in the league. And that was enough to carry the day to get a bid. But it really kind of hid them from any kind of non-conference challenges. All of those examples either failed in their big non-conference tests. We saw Vanderbilt lose by double digits to Drake, for example. To have a shield like that is obviously not equitable. And I get that it's never going to be equitable, but I do think it would be great for the game to give every level an opportunity, especially a team like, a UC San Diego or a Drake of last year, a chance to, even if they got blown out by a Duke, at least we could see what that looks like and make some good decisions in terms of seeds and, of course, making sure we get the right 68 in the tournament. So anyway, I think my larger thing with the ACC right now is let's take a look at like the Pittsburghs, the Notre Dames, the Georgia Techs, the Stanfords, the Wake Forest, the Virginia Techs. Like, are they going to take those 2 extra non-conference games, Greg, and go play a Mountain West team? My hunch says they won't. But I think that's what the league's trying to get them to do, because otherwise it's not going to move the needle for the league. In fact, it might hurt the league to give them two more bad games. It's just going to make their non-conference metrics even worse. They need to start mandating scheduling policies in the ACC because the league's not what it used to be.
Yep, it certainly has not been, and it's going to be really interesting to see what we get this year out of the ACC as Rocco Miller does great work over at bracketeer.org. Joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And just how have you taken a look at this offseason for the ACC? Because we've seen a few new coaching hires, and I feel like they did a better job this cycle than they did on the previous cycle. Last few have been really underwhelming, and I think that Jai Lucas is going to be able to get Miami, at the very least, back to respectability. I don't know if they're going to be going back to the Final Four or anything like that, but they're certainly in a better place than they were last season. I do feel like the bottom teams out there in the ACC have done a little bit better, but I still take a look at things league-wide, and I take a look at these schools like Boston College who aren't adding a lot in the transfer portal, and I still do have a big fear that there's going to be a divide between the haves and the have-nots in the conference, so pretty bullish on SMU as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think with Duke, UNC, and Louisville, you have a very solid three. I think Louisville will even take a step forward and build on what they did this first year with Pat Kelsey. I mean, the roster is crazy good. I think that's right now, Bart Tarvik's got them 17th going into next year. I think that's about right. Somewhere in that 15 to 20, maybe as high as top 10 range to enter the season. They're going to be a juggernaut offensively. I think North Carolina, at least talent-wise, is there. They got to win the games to back that up, but I think the talent's certainly there. And then I agree with you, SMU, at least on paper, they got to prove it still. They're a good roster. You like what Clemson has been able to build. They lose a couple more pieces again this year, but I think they have enough back to at least project as a team that will fight for a bid. And they've just been so solid these last couple of years. It's hard to pick against Clemson making it. And then, like I said before, I think the teams to watch, Miami built a great roster, but we have no idea what Jai Lucas can do as a head coach. Winning games on the margins is always the key in any league, especially if you're an unproven coach. Curious to see, I'm sure there's a good chunk of teams Miami's going to out-talent, but you have so many distractions at that school. We've seen so many, even in the Jim Larinaga era, the extremes of when they were good and locked in versus the extremes of lose a couple games and don't care anymore. Jai Lucas has to be very careful of that here in year one because he's got players, but he's also going to have distraction in that environment. I'm never going to bet against Will Wade, right? I am all in on NC State. I think he's got enough there to at least get them into the field, and that's going to be huge for the league. And now with Virginia, I do like Virginia's roster. I just listed 8 schools. I think out of those 8, you should be able to get 6. And there's upside to get more than 6. That would be a massive improvement based on what the ACC did last year and probably even better than 2 years ago. Then you look at incremental improvement at places like Syracuse and Notre Dame, at least bringing some continuity back. You would hope they could be better. Wake Forest is always feisty. I'm not in love with their roster, but I do trust Steve Forbes to compete. Virginia Tech, they really went through a youth movement last year, but they've got some experience at least to build on that, and Mike Young can really coach. Stanford's going to have a young team, but Kyle Smith's an incredible coach, and they'll have a distinct home court advantage with all the travel it takes to come out here to the Bay Area. So those are some of the teams I'm looking at. I would love to see California take a step forward, but it's just hard. They have a lot to learn from last year, that first year in the league. And Florida State's really the main wild card, bringing in some talent, a lot of NBA guys on the staff. Maybe the one college guy is Michael Fly, who I've been talking to the most about scheduling, but everybody else is coming in from the NBA. So it's really hard to predict what the Seminoles are going to do. And then I think anything else would be a bonus, whether it's Boston College, Georgia Tech. Yeah, those are my overall thoughts.
I love it. It's going to be a really interesting season out there in the ACC, and they really are the power conference that I think has the most intrigue because they have fallen the hardest of all of them. Because I even take a look at the Big East. I know that Seton Hall has not necessarily had the transfer portal class that I love, but I take a look at schools like Butler getting a little bit better, and I'm very intrigued by them. Obviously, in the SEC, all 16 teams are trying to be able to beef up, and I like the offseason of the Big Ten as well. And that just leaves the ACC sort of in no man's land because while all these other conferences are leveling up, we are seeing it in the ACC. Like you mentioned, you've got that Big Three, you've got that Big Four, and then everyone else. Whereas the rest of these conferences, it feels like it's just a little bit more of a gauntlet.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, the Big Ten has just spent a ridiculous amount of money. They might have outspent the SEC. I don't know if there's any.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the rosters are crazy. And so it's going to be a war. In some ways, I appreciate if you can balance out the money part of it in a given league. Then it comes back to the old things that really matter. Who plays defense, who rebounds, who can coach. Like those are the things that win you games when everything else is close enough to even, right? So I think, that's where your Tom Izzo's and, your Mick Cronin's, your Dusty Mays, and obviously Matt Painter with the team he has coming back should be really, really difficult still to beat in this league. And I've got, a lot of chips in for Ben McCollum and his track record with Bennett Sturts at Iowa. I think they're going to really, really be a pain in the butt of anybody in that league and maybe even good enough to win it. So that's where I kind of start to separate the teams, is right there at the head coaching position, which I think is a smart thing to do in most leagues, unless there's just a clear talent gap. But I do think, even teams like obviously USC has a lot of talent. So does Ohio State and Wisconsin, your guys from your home state. Washington, Maryland, Indiana have brought in talent. Maryland will have Buzz Williams for the first time. He obviously usually figures things out pretty quickly. Have to kind of depend on that in terms of projecting the Terps. And then Darian DeVries, I've always loved what he's been able to do. Hard to pick against him. I think Sprinkle just started late at Washington last year, but he's got quite a bit to work around now with Zoom returning, bringing Yates back, getting 2 players of the year from the mid-major ranks with Lipscomb's Jacob Ognisevich and Quinn Peterson out of East Tennessee State, SoCon Player of the Year, ASUN Player of the Year. I'm intrigued what he can do there. And then obviously Dana Altman at Oregon is always solid, and I think they got room to add 1 or 2 more big-time pieces. He usually does that late in the spring. And Nico Medved at Minnesota, I think they're going to really, really compete. He's got his dream job there in the Twin Cities, and I don't think they're going to back down from anybody.
I don't think so either. And I do think that those coaching hires that we saw in the Big Ten are really the big impact as well, with Nico Medved and all he's been able to do. But as we know, that left a little bit of a trickle down the Mountain West. And I think under the radar, they had some really good hires with Ali Faroukmanesh. And I'm not sure how much you've been able to gauge New Mexico, what they've been able to do, but they, along with UNLV, have been some of the biggest surprises in the portal for me, because they've added some really good talent here over the last few weeks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, New Mexico with Olin, first of all, they're going to run amazing offense like they were doing the last couple of years at UC San Diego. Obviously, last year, everything clicked and they had that continuity with the guys. This year, it maybe take a little while to feel it out, but I think by the time we get to league play, they're going to be a contender. Utah State did a great job bringing back. Sometimes, like Trilly Donovan says, it's sometimes your best gets are the ones that were already there. And with Carson Templin coming back and Mason Falslev for sure coming back, those are 2 huge pieces. They influx some talent with Colby King and Gary Clark, Tucker Anderson. So I like what Utah State's done. I think Nevada, they had a little bit of a disappointing year last year. They should be able to grow from what they had. And then the big question in the league is Magoon Gwath at San Diego State. Now, obviously, I think it got revealed just in the last few weeks that he had knee surgery, which might have scared off the Power 5 teams from offering him a substantial offer in the portal, and might be the core reason why he's still on the Aztecs. Now the question is he going to be healthy enough to start the season? Because if he is, they'll have Reese Waters back, who missed all of last year. BJ Davis already had a huge leap in his development. Now he'll be a junior. You have 2 seniors with Jeremiah Odin and Sean Newman Jr. coming over. And Latrell Davis is still there, who I love. So I think if the Aztecs are fully healthy, they're the team to beat in the league and kind of get back to them being on top. But if there's any issues with Gwath's injury, the door's wide open for a Utah State or maybe even a surprise winner like a New Mexico, a Nevada, a CSU. And you can't forget about Boise, who still has some good pieces up there as well.
Yep, no question about it. And Rocco, it is going to be such a great season that we're going to be getting. And we're just getting started here in the offseason. We've got like 6 months until the start of the college basketball season. I know you, much like myself, are itching for some games, but you also know that these teams that we are going to be seeing in February, in March, getting all those wins, they're being built right now. You're doing a great job of helping these teams out with their scheduling. You're doing a great job of keeping your finger on the pulse of a little bit of everything. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. Twitter and X and Blue Sky, all of those, however you want to phrase those platforms, at Rocco Miller 8. Keep everybody posted as best I can on schedule updates. I'm doing consulting for several teams and events. So there is a lot of information I'm not able to share these days. Once I'm able to share it, I get it out there so you guys can hear about it first publicly. And then also, at bracketeer.org, by the end of May, we will start with the power conferences. The SEC and the Big Ten will be the first two schedule pages to go up. So you can always find Easter eggs in there. Not every game will be tweeted about. So if you just want to come over to bracketeer.org, I would say starting with, maybe the fourth week of May, but we'll slowly roll out each league team by team. You'll find games that might not be announced in there. So that's always a good resource. And if you love the work we're doing at bracketeer.org, there's always a support button. We do it all nonprofit, but we always accept donations. So feel free to hit the support button if you feel inclined, and always enjoy being on the line here with you, Greg, to keep you updated on what's going on with me and see what's going on with the rest of the college hoops talk.
Absolutely. Rocco just does such an amazing job looking at this great game of college basketball and is a wealth of information. A big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by our good friend Rocco Miller. He does such great work over at bracketeer.org. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, we all get quite a bit smarter, and he was able to help out with that once again today. So a big thanks to Rocco for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball on Sunday. We did see a good NBA draft decision go the way of Duke. Isaiah Evans had been going through the NBA draft process. He has decided that he is going to be pulling out of the NBA process, and he is going to be heading back to Duke. For Evans, it was a little bit of a one-trick pony, I think, to say the least, last season. He was a really good three-point shooter for Duke. He was logging for them about 7 points per contest. Really didn't give you much by way of rebounds or anything like that, but was able to shoot about 41.5% for three. Did fall out of the rotation towards the back half of the NCAA tournament, but still, he should be a nice upside guy for Duke. Duke should be one of the best teams in all of college basketball once again this year. Obviously, they're not going to have that guy by the name of Cooper Flagg, but the Boozer brothers coming in, that's going to be very rock solid for them, and that was a very good piece of news for them on a wonderful Mother's Day. Once again, hopefully all of you mothers out there had an absolutely wonderful Mother's Day, because you all deserve it. And how about Bethune-Cookman being able to get some riches of their own, as it was a happy day for them, as they're going to be getting Reggie Bass in, as he was over at Lindenwood last year, averaged about 12 points, 2.5 assists per contest, began his career out there in the MAC. He was over at Central Michigan along with Kent State, and this is a really good ad for a Bethune-Cookman team that they actually have a lot of pieces that returned not from last year, but from 2 seasons ago, because Bethune-Cookman had a pair of really good guards 2 seasons ago, and Jacoby Heedy along with Zion Harmon, who were able to combine for about 30 points per contest. Both left the previous offseason, went other places. They're now back. Now they're going to be teamed up with Reggie Bass as well. This is going to be a very formidable team out there in the SWAC. The SWAC always generates a 16 seed in the NCAA tournament, but I'm looking at this thing on paper, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing. He saw Jeremiah Nicardo. He was over at Stony Brook last season. He's averaging about 2.5 points, 2 rebounds per contest at 6'9". He has decided that he is going to be going to Sacramento State. Sacramento State has really done a nice job of being able to beef up their roster over the last few weeks. Now, this is not one of those moves that is going to be pushing them to the promised land, and if this gentleman from Stony Brook is seeing a bunch of minutes, well, something has went horribly wrong for Sacramento State, because you take a look at what they've been able to add over the last, we're going to call it about week and a half, ever since Shaquille O'Neal got in the fold, because his son Shakir O'Neal is now over there. They bring in Jeremiah Cherry from UNLV. He should be a starting big man for them. Brandon Gardner, he comes on over from Arizona State. You bring in Mikey Williams. You bring in Jaden Teat from Utah. So you've got a lot of rock solid guys that are going to be coming in. This should be nothing more than a little bit more of an ancillary piece, but still, this is very helpful for that program, and they're going to be looking to be able to get back online. So do love to be able to see that. Additionally, you've got Keontae Lewis, who was over at Wagner last season. He was a starter that was able to average 5.5 points, 5 boards per contest. He's decided that he's going to be going to Norfolk State. And for Norfolk State, this bunch is always very much predicated on defense. What they've really been lacking over the last few seasons has been that good, solid rebounder, and I believe that at 6'9", he's going to be able to be that. And for Norfolk State, this is always a school that out there in the MEAC, they get some of the best NIL. They are able to do a solid job hooking in there some transfers. They've got Davon Ellis, who's going to be coming over from Valparaiso. Elijah Jamison, who was over at UNC Wilmington and UW Milwaukee, is coming in there. Deion Wright-Ford, who was over at Texas A&M Corpus Christi as well. So I really like the way that things are coming together for this program. They've done a nice job of being able to mix and match. They're going to have themselves some better size than what we've seen over the past few seasons as well. So really good pickup on that front. And I thought that this was also a pretty rock solid pickup as well. DJ Turn It Up Patrick. He's going to be going to UNC Wilmington. Limited to just 3 games last season. When he was out there on the floor for Charleston Southern 2 seasons ago, he was averaging about 10 points, a little bit over 4 rebounds per game. He actually began his career at South Florida, and he's got a little bit of versatility at 6'6". Not a guy that's going to be going into like straight flamethrower mode for 3-point range or anything like that, but it's a guy that's able to be a little bit of a mixer and shaker. Career about 31% 3-point shooter. I like his overall game. I think that this is going to be a move that pans out for them, and this is going to be able to elevate them, obviously assuming that he is going to be fully healthy for this season, because if not, well, then you're looking at a little bit of a different ball of wax. But that's it for this UNC Asheville team. They are losing quite a bit from a season ago, so that's going to be a little bit rough for them. Really, ever since they lost Drew Pember from 2 seasons ago, it's been a little bit more brutal for this UNC Asheville team, and we've seen the NIL collectives just really be stepped up out there in the Big South as well. This is really one of the first moves that we've seen from UNC Asheville. They also are going to be bringing in a gentleman by the name of Chicago Powell from Florida Atlantic and Mitchell Taylor from South Carolina State. So they're starting to get on the board, and this is a move in the right direction for them. And so is this as well, as Zay Blake heading on over to UT Rio Grande Valley. I still remember when Zay Blake was on UW Milwaukee, and he was able to do a really good job in terms of his 3-point shooting. This is someone that just was a little bit buried over the last few seasons on the bench of a few different teams. He was most recently at Wagner, and I mean, over at Wagner last year, he was able to give you about 10 points per contest, shot 41.5% from 3 over at Green Bay. A few seasons ago, he was shooting closer to 44% from 3 points. For Grand Valley, they really struggled with their 3-point shooting towards the back half of the season last year when they lost Hassan Abdul-Hakim. It was really an offense that was very rudderless and had just gone into a funk. This is a big time ad for them. I do think that this is one that is very much going to be panning out for them. And then you saw Josh Smith, who was over at NC Central last season. He has decided that he is going to be going to West Georgia. West Georgia not going to be eligible for the NCAA tournament this year because they're still under the transitionary rules. But for Josh Smith, he was able to average 9 points per game last season, was limited to just 5 games due to injury, but a career 41.8% 3-point shooting team. For West Georgia, they really have not brought in much of anything via the transfer portal thus far this season, so they needed a sort of ad like this, especially after being one of the worst offenses in all of college basketball. They weren't really able to find a lot from 3-point. This is going to be very rock solid for them, and I do think that this is going to be a move of great impact and should be able to elevate this team moving forward. And we're looking to elevate you this college basketball season by looking at all these moves that we're seeing in college basketball. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Junit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to Rocco Miller, Racketeer.org, for joining me in last segment. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.